Bluffs Savings Bank, you still get personalized customer service.
We have identity-safe checking with LifeLock, identity theft protection.
You get personal mortgage lending to fit your needs now and in the future.
You get business banking with the latest technology because saving you time saves you money.
At Council Bluffs Savings Bank, you get people who answer when you call and local employees who are actively involved in our community. Council Bluffs Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.
Any questions relative? Yes, yeah, Larry's going to give us an update on Bluffs Fest. Sorry.
It's almost here. It's been a lot of work. My goal today is just to kind of brief the council on what you can expect starting this weekend. And if you've been watching the schedule, there's lots going on all over the park system, particularly in Hannaford this summer. We have wrapped up our fundraising drive. Total amounts of in-kind cash that have been raised is $624,854. Sponsored contribution and event revenues $348,000. Iowa West has underwritten us for a total of $175,000. In-kind contributions from others $48,900. The value of our city workers to the project is about $52,000. So a lot of people to make this work, but the good news is everything is in place. The weather turns out great, we'll be ready to go. So I thought, because it's important to all of us to not only talk about the events, but without the support of the folks that I mentioned, the total amount of money we couldn't do. We started this Saturday, of course, with Chicago. Chicago hasn't been in the market for a couple of years. I think this will be a big draw if, in fact, the weather stays good. Our sponsors here are American National Bank, Continental Foods, and MFT Construction. So we have some people on both sides of the river. On Sunday, we move into fireworks with the Omaha Symphony. Great sponsors, HGM Associates, Southwest Iowa Foundation, and Dollar Distributing, and then partner sponsors, J&M Display, and Omaha World Carol. Monday, we kind of take a day off to recoup and hopefully get the park cleaned up and ready to go, so we're just doing picnics in the park. Sponsor for that event is the Peter Kiewit Foundation, and supporting partners ABC Electric. On Tuesday, we go back to Chicago and bring in Second City, North America's most famous comedy troupe, and they'll be performing a blend of classic scenes from their nearly 50-year archive. Our sponsors for that night are Warren Distribution, Security National Bank, supporting partners Mid-America Center, and Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil. You'll find out Wednesday night that this is actually almost today, the 40th anniversary of the movie Jaws. So we are going to dun down at the park with the big screen. A big thank you to our sponsors, Schneider Associates, and supporting partners, Group and Jim Hawk Truck Trailers. Thursday, we are doing Throwback Thursday, which is a group that specializes in Foreigner music, very popular in the Midwest. Our sponsors that night are HDR, Suzuki, Triple Crown Sports, and supporting partners Hamilton Associates. Journey. Hey, it's a journey. Oh, see,
Same era,
similar. Close. Similar.
So Friday, there's been a lot of talk on both sides of the river about trying to do events together and bring joint activities and joint cooperation to events on the riverfront. And I think Council Bluffs is proud to be able to say we're taking the first step with this. So the first time, old standards on the Omaha side, including the Taste of Omaha, and Omaha, which Omaha is a long-established brand of Indian music. Over the past winter, the three of us have met and worked out an arrangement, so they actually are coming over to be part of Bluffs Fest. So the Taste of Omaha will be coming across the bridge. They'll be having activities starting on Friday. They have a series of concerts, and they'll have food that has a lot of Council Bluffs flair to it, a lot of local vendors in it. And for those of you that saw the helicopter and asked how it was doing, one of the things they'll be doing is helicopter rides. So we think that'll bring a lot of people over to see helicopter, and a chance to ride on the rides.
It's not.
And additionally, they have lots of other things that they're playing on Friday night. And also, on Friday night is our Les Fest portion of that night. It's called Disney Day in the Park, and we are
They're
bringing
wrapped up.
to the park Imagination Movers. And they are on Nick Jr. about once a week.
No.
Been doing that for quite a while. So that's really fun for families and young kids and younger adults with families. Our sponsor for that is the Charles D. Layton Foundation. Saturday, again, we have the Taste of Omaha in the park with their activities. Additionally, we have a bike event that starts in the park. Our sponsors for that are Arby's and Panda together, Council Bluffs CVB, and Potawatomi County Tourism. And also on Saturday, we start the mini Maha. So Maha is coming over. They're doing a mini Maha festival, including Ben Quiller, the Dodos, and Wacato from Lincoln. Our sponsors there are the Nauto Companies, Broadmoor, and Hewitt Building Group. And we end up on Sunday with a golf tournament. Presenting sponsor for that is Harris. Stewart Community Law Firm is a sponsor, and Beach Camper sponsor. So as I go through this, or went through this, I think what's kind of interesting is that it's a real mix of support, financial support, and interest on both sides of the river, which I think says something about the event and the facilities, and hopefully we've been able to produce a quality thing that people want to be part of. So we're excited about having you all down there, and hope the weather good, and we'll have a great time.
Any questions?
There's a lot of excitement about it this year. Like, people are really excited for it. So great job. I know it's been a ton of work. Very excited.
Yeah, it really is a great tribute to Larry. There's a lot of money to raise, and a lot of work to raise it. And a week ago, he came to me and said, I'm 11,000 short. We just were kind of fortunate that things fell together and fell apart for the Celebrate CB, because the Dell family was planning to do it. So
I wonder if that was what that was when it's. That worked out good. Yeah.
good job. Thank you, Larry, for, I don't know how we're going to do it if you don't do it. So. I'll take a 20-minute break. All right, thank you, Larry. On to the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda?
I have a brief clarification on 3D. So the setback, just so I know, and I followed this correctly, the R3 minimum setback is 20 foot. And so the houses are going to still be at 20 foot. It's just that the easement is going from 38 to 28. Is that right? Okay. Just want to make sure I have that right. Thank you.
On 3C, the budget amendment, the way the staff package is worded here talks about the different programs have to be covered if budget expenditures exceed the amount originally budgeted. Then it goes on to list all 8 areas of the budget that's reported out to the state. I'm assuming that not all 8 areas have been that need amendment. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
We will have a public hearing, scheduled public hearing to go over that. So it's just a catch-all to have all areas in the process of talking about what projects we budget for in the general fund. Didn't get funding during the year because we'll have to make adjustments for those. On We had an ambulance that came in early that we paid for, so we'll have to make an adjustment for that. And Dan, go ahead and take it away from there.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilman. We are doing just a final review of the whole budget amendment process for the end of the year because it is important in complying with Iowa law to get that put together. The last thing we have to do is Dennis McElderry is going to take a look again through the wages and benefits so that if there are areas there that need some adjustment, we can get that done. It's been kind of a topsy-turvy year for wages and benefits. We want to make sure everything's covered. Otherwise, the ambulance is probably the most interesting piece. That it came in early, and we certainly have the cash to pay for it, but we need to make sure that it's authorized and appropriated. So we want to make that appropriation. We'll be coming back with something that didn't happen in fiscal 15 that needs to move to 16 to use what's appropriated in that area. So there's movement back and forth. We certainly have the cash to make these payments, but we have to make sure it meets the accounting deadlines for our reporting to the state to stay in balance.
Yep.
And we will do our best to make that happen.
And I realize that this is somewhat of a routine measure for just the sorts of reasons that you raised. So it's not a problem that we're doing an amendment. I just wanted to make sure that I properly understood the way that the stat package was worded.
Sure. It's kind of accounting for accountants.
Doesn't mean there won't be something in all areas. I don't know that there is or isn't.
It's not likely there will be something in all areas, but there are some adjustments.
One would be the additional added strength of the fire department will be included in there probably. I don't know that those jobs are, I guess they went on the payroll today maybe. So.
Yes, we have the next 3 days we'll have all of the new firefighters in shift somewhere.
I look forward to seeing the details. Thank you.
Other questions on the consent agenda?
On 3E, remediation, environmental remediation on the former foundry site. Note that the grant application was made back in 2011. I was kind of interested on what data was used in order to make that grant application. In other words, we had to establish that remediation was needed on that site.
Pretty sure what data we had was a series of phase 2 reports that drilled the site and discovered various contaminants.
Has there been any work done on that particular site as far as remediation goes? No. Okay. And the reason I guess I'm asking is because I was looking at the report that was provided to the public at the time that we had public input on the mid-city proposals.
The mid-city proposals do not require mid-city proposals.
Well, I looked at the environmental conditions aspect of that report, and for that particular site, it mentioned that it was classed as hazardous conditions on site not anticipated based on previous assessments. When did we acquire that particular piece of property?
I'd have to go back. I can't answer that today.
Okay.
We've held it for
a number of years. I thought we had. The next page says that all the properties in that area that have potential environmental issues were private properties, not held by the city. So I guess I'm a little bit curious if you're saying that we don't know of any environmental conditions on this site.
I understand that. We do have a phase 2 that documents
Is this the report from the Mid-City Corridor?
We talked about the planning effort, which I think is a little different than the application that we actually made. So.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to straighten out in my own mind what the differences are in these reports, so.
Well, the thing you have before you tonight is a cleanup grant that is intended to clean up some heavy metals, lead, that are existing basically at the corner of 11th and 2nd Avenue on the south side, on both sides of the street.
Okay.
It is a completely separate grant than the Mid-City planning grant, which is just essentially a planning grant for how we should go about proceeding to redevelop our properties, how can we stimulate investment, how can we reach a consensus.
Okay. What is the anticipated use of that particular piece of property?
We would anticipate it to be most likely, and this is not finalized, we would anticipate it to have some sort of commercial aspect.
Okay.
And we are cleaning it up to commercial levels, which are lesser than if we were going to use it for residential purposes. And we've decided to stay away from residential purposes simply because the cleanup costs are more significant. You also have a major rail line there. You've got some questions of whether or not you can get through an environmental review for a residential property, and that there are some issues in the neighborhood that would work against private investment in a residential project. So we're looking at it as commercial development.
Okay. Very good. I appreciate the response.
The other thing that we have with this site is that it's actually bisected with a fairly large sewer.
Mm-hmm.
So that also comes into play.
Okay. Thank you. Just trying to resolve the differences.
Other questions on the consent agenda? So if there are none, we'll move forward to the public hearings. Any questions on the public hearings? Do you have the proclamation? Marcia? It's in that book. I see it. There we go.
Yep.
I don't have it. All right, public hearings. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Wait till ordinance.
If there's none on the public hearings, let's move to ordinances. Anything on first reading?
I've got a question on, I believe it's A1. The way I read it, we're changing an ordinance because an Omaha bike rental place doesn't currently have bikes with lights.
No, you got two different operations here.
Okay.
We were approached by an individual who was present here who actually is planning on renting out in Omaha bicycles that have a 1 horsepower electric motor to assist in the trip. What we have in town, and the change I'm making on that are just the pedal bicycles that are currently, some are located on city right away, some are not, but they're being held out for rent, and our current code says that they should be equipped with a light and other safety equipment as required by our code. The ones that are currently being offered for rent are not equipped by lights, and so to make that operation consistent with our code, or our code consistent with that operation, I'm proposing that. And so there's two items being adjusted in the first ordinance, A1, and then there's the one item is reconciling the definition of, the new definition of bicycle with the definition of motorized scooter.
Okay, so then I guess my question remains, we're changing an ordinance because the bikes don't have lights. Why would we want to not maintain that ordinance and have lights on the bicycles to be safer? I'm still confused.
Well, the thought is that it would still be illegal for anyone to ride them after dark.
It would still be illegal after dark?
Yes.
You can't ride a bike without a light.
After dark, right?
Is this the B-cycles, that's the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
I figured that's what it was.
All right, I just didn't want to change an ordinance because of the Omaha company said so.
The Omaha company is present here. They're the ones who wish to start leasing out the electric motor assisted bicycles, actually in Omaha. But the idea is that they'd be able to, with this change, they'd be able to ride them over the pedestrian bridge, hook up to our trail system, and give our businesses some business.
So would you like to step forward and give us a little narrative?
Yeah, I'd be curious if it's like anything.
Thank you for letting me come. My name is J. William Moore. I'm the publisher of evworld.com. It is one of the longest running internet resources for information on the world of electric bicycles, launched in 1998. I've covered both technology and policy developments affecting electric vehicles now for 17 years. I'd like to think that I not only helped introduce people to a cleaner, greener transportation alternatives, but have helped in some small way to get us to where we are today. There are where as many as a number of electric vehicles were sold in 2014 that were sold in the last 5 years prior to that. What I'm here to talk to you about, or to encourage you to do, is see if we can have the policy amended as discussed with Mr. Wade. I live in Nebraska. I'm a resident of Nebraska. I do have some ties to Iowa. My father is a native of Riverton, Iowa. I started grade school in Hamburg, Iowa. And my daughter is a graduate of the University of Iowa with a PhD in immunology. Very proud of her. Most recently, I helped initiate a change in policy by the Papio, Missouri River Natural Resource District in eastern Nebraska to accept electric assist bicycles on their trail system. The Resource District over there approved that amendment in December of last year. Similarly, I initiated legislation that defines electric bicycles to conform with federal standards as bicycles in Nebraska. This allows them to also be used on state-operated trails. Governor Ricketts signed that bill, LB 95, into law on February 27th of this year. To meet federal requirements, an electric bike must have working pedals. It has a maximum size of the electric motor and not exceed 750 watts, which is the equivalent of 1 horsepower. The bikes that I'm looking to rent will be probably 350 watt is where those will be a maximum. So that's roughly about 2/3 of the horsepower. These are electric bicycles. There is no gasoline motor associated with them. Federal law does not define a gasoline-powered moped as a bicycle. Iowa state law also does not recognize gasoline mopeds as bicycles. So what we're talking about is simply very clean, very quiet electric assist bicycles with small electric assist motors that are now defined as bicycles. In addition to having a not exceeding 750 watts, the motors can only assist you up to 20 miles per hour, at which point the motor has to disengage. So you can pedal that bike as fast as you want to pedal it, but once you get to 20 miles an hour, you're not getting electric assist from it. So I'm here to urge the council to adopt this change in policy that will allow electric assist bicycles that meet federal and Iowa state regulations to operate on the city trails here and on the streets. This will, of course, essentially allow them to operate where any bicycle, conventional pedal bicycle, operates today. In doing so, it will open up cycling to far more people, especially elderly riders like myself, older riders. Many of us want to remain as active as possible as we age, and having electric assist can make that possible. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So the state of Iowa recognizes electric bicycles as bicycles.
Yes.
Our trail system does not allow motorized vehicles.
Right,
So,
which was the same situation over in Nebraska.
So the question is to change our ordinance to allow what Iowa recognizes as bicycles on our bicycles.
Yeah, this would in a sense have nothing to do with Nebraska, it's already provided for in Iowa statute, so. What my idea was is that I want to rent these electric assist bicycles to riders over in Omaha, but in looking at the trail system, obviously I'm concerned for people's safety. I want them to ride where they don't have to necessarily mingle with heavy traffic. And when I was looking at the trail system, it turns out that in fact Council Bluffs has a far better trail system along the river than does Nebraska, does Omaha at this point. And of course, looking, we've got this wonderful pedestrian bridge that links the two. I thought, well, what I would do is we rent the bikes and then we encourage people to bring the bikes across the bridge and then use the trail along the river here. And of course, if they'd like to stop at one of the casinos and get a drink or have lunch, that's certainly their business. But the idea is to try to provide them with a pleasant, safe, scenic route until my city gets up to speed and finally builds a decent trail system over there. So that's the concept.
So these bikes don't cause more wear and tear versus a regular bike? And
just regular bike. The bikes that I would be looking to rent weigh about 55 pounds. I have a bike with me that actually weighs only 32 pounds, but that's not what we would rent. We want something that's suitable for both men and women to ride. And those bikes are anywhere from 45 to 55 pounds.
So it's like a regular, I'm just trying to figure out.
It's just like a regular bike.
Okay, so it's not going to pose a risk to little kids on a bike following their parents or anything? Okay.
And if you're interested, I could show you some examples of what they look like. So. They look, in fact, the bike that I have with me, it's bamboo and aluminum with a special motor out of Italy on it. You cannot tell that it's an electric bicycle. It's so well integrated. And you're welcome to ride if you want.
And they can ride test riding.
Although it would not be legal at this point.
He's trying to get in trouble.
Other questions? You're driving. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for ordinance for second reading?
I think this is the same question I had last time. B, there wasn't any changes noted, and there still isn't any changes noted in the documents in the packet. And I think you just verbally told us last time, but can you refresh my brain?
Fully pivot to, let's see, we're talking B, 7B, sorry, 7B.
7B, air limit control.
Yes, but the main thing is we'll be allowing them to be within 200 feet versus 300 foot residential use, and we're allowing residential users or owners to actually waive the requirement of the 200 foot if they have no objection to the proposed use. Also, we'll be limiting the hours from what currently would be allowed in a licensed volleyball setup to where it has to shut down at 10 o'clock in the night.
Can we get that text actually in the packet for next time? Because I know at the first reading there were a couple of bar owners here because they didn't know what the changes were either, so that might make it easier for everyone.
Yeah, I attempted to do that a couple times. We'll make sure it gets done this next time.
Thank you.
Other questions on ordinances for second reading? The resolutions.
I've got a question on 8B, which is the Waterworks agreement. John, I don't know.
So, AB?
Yeah, 8B.
Yeah, AB2
Yeah, so what I want to understand is this administrative fee. It doesn't cover any costs, so it's not going to cover the cost of putting it in. There's still going to be tap fees for anybody that wants to hook up to it. What is $81,000? If I remember right.
That is to design it, that is to engineer it.
That's for them to engineer it?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much standard protocol with Waterworks. If you were a developer, like the city essentially is in this situation, you have a main extension agreement, there is an additional fee that is paid and that is used to design it.
So how is that fee determined?
They said,
Is it based on the size of the project or?
I would assume it's, their engineer's estimate of what it would take, but that's internally generated.
Sounds like a full-time person for a year, $81,000 for the design of it. It just seemed very high to me. I was really surprised at how much it was for.
No, I mean, it's, did we say what the total price tag is estimated in here?
For the whole project?
170,000, so,
What was it? Because that was actually my question.
you're a little bit about 10%.
The only question I had, I was trying to understand what it was used for.
And that answered my question.
On 8I, the non-union wage increase, I'd like to know what is the cost of that wage increase for non-union workers? I realize it's in the budget, but I'm asking what's the difference between the non-union wage total with and without the 2.5% increase?
Thank you. I can get that number for you, Al. I don't know what that number is.
Okay. Can I get that before the meeting tonight?
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Did you know that in your write-up, you were missing your department and the person who requested it? Typically, that little detail's in there on the upper left box.
Okay. I thought that we used the same form as last time, but
You ran it by me, I should have come.
It was, yeah, it was completely blank, so I assumed it came from you, but,
I did.
yeah, okay. Can I go back to E and F?
And kind of the history of that is that typically we've mirrored whatever the clerical workers union contract was. We've chosen to mirror the wage increase, but not the term. And, our intent is not to be detrimental to the non-union workers, but we just felt like it was a year-to-year deal since it was not a negotiated contract. So that's a change in how we've historically done it. In the past, if the clerical workers would have agreed to a 3-year, 2.5%, then the non-union would get that same exact. And we didn't think that made perfect sense to do that. So we are mirroring their increase for next year, and then we'll bring back a recommendation next year for the following.
Going back to 8E, is that building in between ours?
When you say ours, when you mean
The cities, belongs to the city. There's like, there's a building in between the two that we're acquiring, or at least it looked like it was on the map.
what property are you
Trying to
referring
get,
to?
3402 Second Avenue and 3414 Second Avenue. Trying to get to
Looks
that.
like there's a commercial business between those two private properties.
No, that's a heating business.
Okay, so it's not city.
No, and then the next to that is duplex, triplex, maybe? And then you have Echo Interstate Lighting. After that, and Echo Interstate Lighting owns the property to the north,
Okay.
which we do not own yet. We set to close September.
Okay.
Other questions on the resolutions?
On 8G, or I'm sorry, 8J, the CIP, we had a few questions. I note that line item for the new police headquarters was increased from 13 million in the last CIP to $20 million in the proposed CIP. I was kind of curious, what's some of the reasons contributing to that large increase? Cost.
Great question. Little history, we've been working on new buildings since about 2000. Every year that we delay that, it's gone up about 3 to 4, maybe 5%. As that number creeps up into the millions, that percentage increase goes up dramatically. And doing some research and preparing for the needs assessment and putting out bids to get the engineering done, that was the top end. I'd much rather wag high and come in low. So it's just an earmark right now at this point.
Okay.
I know that from back in 2010, when we talked about it, it was a $20 million price tag. That was the engineer's estimate, so I don't know while they plugged it into the CIP.
I think that in prior years, if I remember it right, Mayor, is that they were looking at, you know, the offset between what we could get for selling the existing space to the county and the cost. I think that some of that played in, if I remember right. I think you're right.
And some of the numbers I've seen were 2017 and 22. 17 and 20 also, not 22.
And it depended on whether we owned the ground or not. What we were looking at was the most recent proposal. I think there was a specific location that the city already owns. The size of a piece of ground.
Well, and I appreciate that comment because that kind of rolls into my second question, and that's, you know, trying to get the details on how all the funding works out, because in that potential charge for the existing space may have been reflected in the last CIP, had like $4.5 million in other funding. It's not there this year. Instead, it reflects a $10 million charge against general funding. And so I was kind of curious to have that level of charge against general funding in 1 year. Is that potentially going to create some budgetary risk for that year? That's a pretty
The way we
heavy
split
charge.
the cost for that $20 million,
Yeah.
at this point, I don't think we
It was
anticipate
10 out of bonds and 10 out of other funding right now.
Right.
Okay, perhaps then that's a typo in the current CIP, because as I read it here, it said general funds.
The first one you got 2 weeks ago, it was incorrect. The corrected one that should be on tonight's agenda is correct.
Okay.
It should be what you have now, with 10 in other and 10 in GO.
Oops. Okay.
Well, that's because you insisted on getting it before it was completed, which we did, which we gave you. But
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
And of course, that would be non-essential corporate purpose use, which would require a vote of the people. So.
Another question I had with respect to the CIP was wastewater treatment plant nutrient reduction. Notice that it relies upon $25 million in other funding, and this may be a question that can't be answered in public. I don't know. I was kind of curious as to what that other funding refers to. And if you need to answer that offline, I'm good with that.
No, actually, that's a place marker. It's to remind us that we have an upcoming obligation. We don't know how long it is. But we want to get it in there so that it forces us to deal with how we're going to comply with the regulations. We don't know at this time if it's even mandated by DNR.
Okay.
What's happening is we're at capacity of the plant, so we're looking at ways to expand capacity. Our concern is when we go to DNR and say, we'd like to expand our plant, you're going to say, well, what are you going to do about nutrient reduction? And they're going to force us, in order to do expansion, they're going to force us to deal with nutrients before we're really wanting to.
Okay.
So that's, I think,
got it. And I know we've kind of discussed this before, and so I appreciate that.
I mean, if we hadn't, at the worst case, best case scenario is that we would have to have mutual production. We would have 9 years. 4 years, we have to have a plan. Actually, 2 years, we have to have a plan. 5 years, we have to start implementing the plan. 8 years, we have to. If we go to them and say we'd like to make changes at the plant, we're just afraid, well, we're going to take a step back. We should address all those things.
I realize there's a great deal of uncertainty in that. You know, on the other flip side, potential ways to get funding for this project, we've discussed that also. So I'll come back to that later. I appreciate it.
Other questions on the CIP? You know, one of the things we talked about, we did run it through the Planning Commission this year, but there was some debate as to whether or not it needs to go through the Planning Commission. I think the Community Development Director thinks it does. My thought is that there are things on there that have no relevance to the Planning Commission whatsoever. There are certain things in roads and those type of areas that do have relevance to the Planning Commission, but for someone on the Planning Commission to look to see whether or not a new fire truck is an appropriate spending of capital, is kind of, I don't know. So we've debated that back and forth, and we'll probably have that debate again next year. So earlier than this year, obviously. This is way, way, way later than we wanted to get the capital improvement plan to, but the changeover in finance director and stuff, we just didn't feel comfortable presenting that until he had a chance to look at it. So next year we may have that conversation. It's kind of out of the way information.
Greg, I do have one more question. I hate to make you get back up. It's just on the East Beltway, is on the SIP still, or again. Is that moving? Is that project moving forward at all, or is it still kind of stagnant?
It is what we call the Central Beltway by the time we
This is always moving, it's just maybe not moving as fast as we want. But yes, it's progressive. It's tentatively, we're going to have our final public hearing, final EIS, July, August. I hate to throw out dates because I've been on 5 years. Right now, that's our target. So we would have our record of decision by the end of the year, and start signing that decision.
You know, it seems, it was 2005, I think, so it seems an incredible amount of time, but I was watching some show this weekend, and they said that federal road programs typically take about 8 years to.
Yeah, when we first started that EIS, the Fed, Highway just implemented their streamlined process.
Thank goodness.
That's why we went from 8 years down to 7.
Well, they said 3 years. We think, we can get the 3 is 3 years, and that's incredibly fast. That would have been incredibly fast.
Other questions on the resolutions? Any questions on the applications for permits and cancellation?
On 983, there seemed to be a, why are you laughing?
Staff meeting, Tim said, I'm sure the council is going to ask a question about this one.
Well, it seemed like there was just like a flurry of activity for about a month, and then nothing since March. So did you, is that something that you got your team proactively addressed, or did they just?
This is the old Goofy's.
Oh, that's what it is.
Goofy's is shut down.
Okay.
They are in the process of selling the business. It's kind of a bad contract. The new owner actually reached out to us as they were going through the application process. He and his wife approached us and wanted to sit down and talk about the issues that were there before, and he wants to start. This is supposed to, according to them, Platinum Playhouse and Sportsbook is how it's supposed to be. We've laid down very clear guidelines, much like we talked about here at the table several times, to make sure that they understand what our expectations are and what the application process is. We completely review that process or their application. There's nothing that prohibits them from obtaining a license. We told them it would be regular visitors to make sure things are going the way they're supposed to and keep things on track. But we're hoping to start over, because we reminded them several times that they're in a neighborhood. It's not like down in the 100 block where it's a little more commercial or retail. So, does that help?
Yes, yeah, I guess. I mean, when we were having problems a few years ago with Goofies, I actually did a ride-along, so I could see what they...
At Goofies or with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was educational, so...
We're trying to prevent some of these. Keep them in advance, so hopefully that helps. I almost stayed up here the last time I came over. Any other questions on anybody else on the list?
I have another comment. And it might just be because, you know, the change in leadership. We receive your press releases, your write-ups, and that's appreciated. But it makes me think, has this always been happening? It just seems like there's more activity, or does it just appear that way because we're getting information and reports that we didn't before? But I had a little personal panic mode that things were happening that were new.
I don't think, in talking to our staff and trying to get my feel for how things flow too, I don't think this is a significant increase. We're seeing pops in some things. We're trying to stay ahead of those, but my goal is to keep you informed of everything that's going on so you know where we're at the whole time.
No, and I appreciate
don't
that.
like you having surprises, and I want you to be informed so you can answer questions for the public too.
I appreciate that. I just was hoping we weren't going in the wrong direction.
No, I think the direction we're going is absolutely the right direction. We're setting a clear direction for the 100 block as far as what the expectations are. I think there's a positive impact there. Some of it's because of directed action. We're still having some issues down there. In many other ways, we're trying to do the same thing with other things like movies and some of the other problems or challenges with that. Staff is doing a very, very good job.
But I guess my comment was not related just to the bars, but the overall reports that we get now.
Yes.
So, I mean, those are appreciated, but...
I think you'll see positive reported statistics in uniform crime. And that is not any attempt to...
We're not polishing anything, we're presenting the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very factual. And if you look at our website, the numbers will be up there on a quarterly basis so you can see where we're at on a quarter as opposed to once a year. The mayor's absolutely right. We're trying to be more transparent. We're trying to make sure that you are aware, the public is aware, and kind of strengthen those partnerships. Because for you to support us, you really have to know what's going on. So.
Right. Well, my husband regularly checks whatever website it is where you can see the incidents according to neighborhood. He's always on there. So, yeah, right, yeah. So that's, I mean, everything that you're doing is much appreciated.
The other thing I suggest is liking our Facebook page. We can post all those press releases to that page as well, and that's a good way to get information out and forward it to other people.
It's a very active page.
It is, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, it's traffic.
So no problem.
And it gets some good feedback, and it really gives you a feel for what the community thinks about different things. And the feedback on allowing people to come to the police station for Craigslist exchanges, the feedback was good, and people really appreciated that.
Yeah.
So.
We try to engage in good conversations too, like we'll have a question Monday or Coffee Monday where we ask them a question and ask for their feedback specifically. And that's that partnership, that's a relationship. We want to keep friends.
I don't think they like the black uniforms so much.
Nope, and we didn't go.
That was funny, the comments. There was a lot of it about the uniform.
It was a great way to get feedback from the community.
I liked it.
I felt it looked very military and very, harsh.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, I've also heard good feedback from the bar owners too, that they're feeling an increased sense of security themselves, so that reflects well, I think.
Well, we continue to try and meet with the 100 block managers and bartenders to make sure they're still the voice. We want to make sure that they hear us clearly too, hear you clearly on the expectations.
Marcy, on C, could we get a little bit more information when these come forward? You know, I had to really search through for information. So for example, C3, it's a 4-day event. Number 4 is a 2-day event. The beer garden is a 1-day event, but it would be good to have a little bit more information as far as what was going on, in case we get questions. I just thought it would be nice to have that. There's not much on the application at all, as far as information we have.
With regard to 9D1, I wondered, Larry, if you could tell us the number of young people expected this year. I know the Sunbusters has been phenomenal turnout of people. I didn't know if you had any preliminary numbers, how many teams or people. I'm sorry I didn't give you advance notice of the question. I don't mean to push you on the spot. Sunbusters.
Oh, how many people?
Yeah, I know in the past it's been huge, and I think folks should hear more about this, because I think there are a lot of people unaware of how big this is, especially as an economic driver.
It's the largest in the United States.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get you some numbers. I think they're up around 500 teams at one point.
Wow.
And they play all the way over to Fremont, but this is really, gradually has become their go-to place. So we're happy that they continue to come here, and they bring a lot of people. I think every state in the nation has a team. So it's a big deal.
For an extended period of time, and you'll see them in the restaurants.
Oh yeah, the restaurants are packed everywhere.
That's true of the World Series too, right?
Yeah,
World
yeah.
Series.
That's the big draw,
Yeah.
to give them the free tickets for the World Series.
Oh,
College World Series, my personal observation, is not what it used to be as far as bringing in out-of-town people. It's kind of Omaha business entertainment anymore. And so at one point there were no rooms that were available for these kids. But I'm not so sure. I think the hoteliers are thrilled that Sunbusters.
I appreciate that. Yeah, they're reducing. There does seem to be a lot of people, unless that was you or somebody's playing. Then you get a lot of people.
Yeah.
It seemed to bring out the state, yeah.
We could try again this year to go.
Remember when it was pouring, you came to see the
The last time I really got struck by lightning. It's a fun game if you are.
I'm gonna ride the golf cart down the
If
side.
it does it again, we'll know we're jinxing their opening. So.
yeah.
Let's hope we get a faster golf cart.
Other questions on the permits and cancellation? All right, we'll do the executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
At Council Bluffs Savings Bank, you can get the protection you need from the bank you trust.
The only thing more important than knowing your money is safe is the assurance that your identity has protection. Council Bluffs Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.
The Mid-America Center is the Heartland's premier entertainment and convention center. April 25th, the Omaha Roller Girls take on the North Star Roller Girls in roller derby action. Then May 16th, they're back at the MAC for Sponsor Appreciation Night. The MAC offers free parking for all events, including those in the convention center. May 29th through the 31st, Okamacon comes to Council Bluffs. Then July 10th and 11th, enjoy all things British, movies, books, and more at British Fest 2015. Tickets, information, and more at midamericacenter.com.